Walk with me, I'll walk with you. Down these troubled roads we've stumbled into. We're all in this thing together, we're gonna make it through. If you walk with me, I'll walk with you.
Perfect of a song to welcome us into this incredible opportunity to not only celebrate the launch of this new training, but to celebrate you and your collective and individual commitment to this incredible and timely work. My name is Ashley, and I'll be guiding us through our time tonight. And I'm thrilled to connect with Adrian, Solma, and Aaron. And over the course of our time tonight, you'll get to dive deeper into their work in the respective communities and how it ripples across the country. I know our organizers have prepared a video for us to really set the tone and welcome us into this very thought-provoking and dynamic conversation.
The country is incredibly divided.
Each side sees the other as an existential threat.
When you never see someone who's different from you, it's much easier to be fearful of them. It's much easier to demonize them.
Political polarization seems to be getting worse in this country.
The United States is the most politically divided and dysfunctional of all of the G7 economies.
Can America breach this massive
American
divide?
democracy truly
Urban versus
is in
rural,
the
black
balance
versus
here.
white, rich years actually
Deep exhaustion is not healthy for democracy.
country divided.
There are so many people that are discouraged and angry.
You know, it wasn't enough to just wander around in my garden and stew and worry about the state of our country.
Lost a connection to the greater purpose that really united all of us.
I live in Texas, so I'm acutely aware of the divide that we ask our contacts about because I live it.
For my grandson, who is multiracial, my God, the fear is real.
We're not conditioned to reach out to talk to people who just oppose our views, and especially not with curiosity and with empathy and with compassion and with an open mind and an open heart. But that's what we need to do. We talk about it all the time in the project, but we can't change something we don't understand. So let's learn to understand it.
Because it's allowing me to have the kinds of conversations that I can't have with some of my own relatives. And I'm hoping that this will eventually help me find a pathway back to them.
I also have learned through these messages how much we are all craving a sense of community.
Finding ways to reach across that divide is what feels very healing.
In my old life, I probably would have argued with him. I probably would have tried to tell him all the reasons that he was wrong. But instead, because of the training that I've learned from this program, I sat back and I listened and I got curious and asked why.
That persuasion doesn't happen here. It happens here. And so that's where the listening and the connection comes in, because that opens a space.
And that's why I fight. I spend my time looking, and hopefully my one voice can lead to many voices fighting this very important battle to save our democracy.
it's really my great honor on behalf of Horizons to say congratulations to all of the partners that have been involved in launching the United Vision National Training Hub. This is such important work, as all of us are increasingly concerned about the state of democracy in the United States. We have a lot of different entry points to this work. We have a lot of different conceptions of what's needed. And the beauty of this training hub and the organizations that have come together to really bring this forward is because of that respect for the diversity of entry points, of defining the problem, of really wanting to build the skills of deep listening and caring and understanding for our fellow citizens who maybe are coming at the problems that we face with a little bit of a different perspective. And we need this kind of training. We need these skills. I really believe in the conflict resolution, dialogue, deep listening skills that the approach that the United Vision team has been taking to this work for many years. And so there's such a wealth of knowledge to share. And so, on behalf of Horizons, we're committed to continuing this spirit of collaboration and really look forward to working with all of you in the days ahead and in really scaling up this work, because we need it, and yet we're all coming to this with a spirit of optimism and agency that we can really make a difference.
I'd like to take a couple of minutes to tell you why you should get involved with and support in absolutely any way you can the new National Training Hub that's being put together by our friends at the United Visions Project. I would like to start by just saying that here at PRA, our motto is inform your resistance. And by informing your resistance, we mean not dropping into some kind of defensive posture, but really understanding what you're up against and trying to bridge divides, build a bigger we that can help us really understand where we're trying to get to and how we need to get there. The UVP project is all about this. Hey, they've talked to over 100,000 people in multiple states. They keep adding more. They've reached out to almost 750,000 people. And these are real volunteers having real conversations with people they might not otherwise even have a chance to meet. People become real to each other when they talk. When they talk to each other from a place of sincerity and authenticity, where they're upfront about their grievances and what they see as the biggest threats. That's what this is all about. It's not about pretending that there aren't real differences. It's not about abandoning core values or making compromises that would put the most vulnerable among us at greater risk. Quite to the contrary, this is about starting from where people are, engaging with them, and seeing where there might be common ground, whether that's around housing, or whether that's around healthcare, or whether that's around trying to make sense out of a changing world, and having empathy for others, and having a groundness in real justice, and an appreciation for democracy, real democracy that is inclusive and that makes no apologies for that inclusion. So I want to urge you, grounded in my 30 years, 3 decades of looking at threats to democracy, at looking at political violence and disinformation and the politics of resentment, to get involved, inform your resistance, check out the training hub, make a donation, do whatever you can to support this critical work. And there is no time to waste. We are growing further apart every day, and hey, it's on us to try to bring us all back together.
Down Home is organizing in rural North Carolina, small towns and country places from all the way up in Appalachia down to the coast. Our members are working class, and they're working for working class policy. They're working to get working class folks elected to local office, state office, and maybe someday even federal office. We love our work and we believe in our people, but the places we organize are really hard. It's important for us to be able to reach across difference and build multiracial, big, broad-based coalitions. That's where the work of the United Vision Project is so important to us. Like us, they're trying to envision a way that we can reach out and have deep, engaging conversations with people across difference, where we're not trying to leave people behind, but we're trying to bring people along with us because we care about everyone in our communities. We're really excited about the launch of this national training hub because we know that we need, and we know that our movement needs, the skills and investment to really be able to bridge the divides that we're seeing every day in our community. We're so grateful for this work. We're so excited to become a part of it, and we can't wait to see where it goes.
When I came into the movement, I really didn't check off every single box on our progressive ideology. People had to literally understand my viewpoint in order to be able to move me into the movement. And guess what? I was moved by some very good organizers. And I think that that's why you meet people where they are at and really listen to validate and to understand, like approaching it with a sense of curiosity about why the I think our experiences shape who we are in life and create our viewpoints and our prejudices, etc. And in order to unpack that and to try to build the world that we're trying to live in, we have to meet people exactly where they're at and then start creating some dissonance about where they actually are and why that doesn't necessarily equate like the world that we want to live in. Because in terms of values, I think most people or most people want to see societies that are healthy and that are supported and that people have opportunity in and that children actually get the education they need, that people are actually housed. And I think that those are the things. How we get there is where the disconnect comes from because of the prejudices that we carry or because of the things that we have been taught and the narratives that have dominated us. And so we have to unpack all of that, wash it out, and repack it a little bit so that we can be rowing in the boat in the same direction. We're networking. We're actually talking to other people and building community with other people that can really lift up and resolve the problems or the issues or the whatever it is that we're facing. No, you've never done it before. It's like jump in, do what you can as you're going through your learning, and we're training and we're supporting you. Welcome to the United Vision National Training Hub.
Absolutely beautiful and exciting. As our guest on the video stated, I just want to echo, welcome to the United Vision National Training Hub launch. We are thrilled to have you tonight. My name is Ashley C. Smith. I'll serve as your facilitator. I'm based here in Lexington, Kentucky, where our state motto is United we stand, divided we fall. And I truly believe that is a great axiom to guide and lead the spirit of our time tonight. I'm thrilled to be here facilitating Adrienne Evans, Executive Director of the United Action Idaho and United Vision Idaho, Solma Arias, Executive Director, People's Action Institute and People's Action, Aaron Heaney, National Director for Showing Up for Racial Justice, or affectionately known as SURJ. Let's give a round of applause, not only for our incredible guests, but for yourself. First, I want to start by lifting up the respective, impressive leadership of these three women. This critical work is, as you heard in the videos leading into our time, absolutely timely, imperative, and critical. Solma, you are a driving force for our movements and leading one of the most powerful organizations here in the country. Aaron, You've been championing the work of organizing working class, poor, and white people across this country, building a home for everyone to play a part in dismantling nationalism and white supremacy. And lastly, Adrian, you've brought me into this work, and I'm very appreciative and grateful. You know firsthand this struggle of facing rural and conservative parts of the country and developing this work to do something about it. And as we look at this national training hub and its 3 phases, tonight we are here in the first phase as we launch out. So we're going to now deep dive into the nuts and the bolts of what brought us to this place. And I just want to, again, offer thanks and celebration for this incredible leadership. Selma, we'll start with you. So recently, you've launched the organizing revival, the fire breaks out over multiple nights and it just catches from one person to the other. So can you tell us more about what an organizing revival means?
Yes, Ashley is. So thank you for all the beautiful words. It's also an honor to be here with you. I'm an admirer of you and your work. And of course, Aaron and Adrian and everyone joining us tonight. Thank you for taking the time to be in this conversation with us. It's exciting. And yes, an organizing revival. I also, like you, Ashley, understand the excitement and grew up doing organizing revival. So when I heard about the organizing revival idea here at People's Action, I said, sign me up. Look, I think that we here at People's Action, the incredible work that this organization has done for almost 50 years, is being built on incredible legends of organizing, people that I respect, that many of us respect. Some of the best organizers I know doing incredible things in this country were trained in this network. And so we know how important it is, what a solid foundation looks like. And so we come from people who taught us that. And one of the things that was key to that was like organizing is about base building, is about the rigor and the discipline of good training. And like some of you all have said, is the curiosity to want to know something about that other person. But it's also, there's a transformative aspect to it, which is the reason why I'm here. Like some of the people in the video, I live in Kansas. I am an immigrant from El Salvador, and an organizer found me and also got close to me, was curious about me and brought me into this work. And so that is the same, transformative aspects of organizing that's kept me here, what's kept me in this network. And we know that when those things are there, we have a healthy movement. We have a movement that thrives and that not only is full of like that emotion and that movement that happens in the organizing revivals, but you can see it's alive and it's healthy and it's thriving. But we know that we live in the age of digital activism, of social media, the disinformation, misinformation. There are so many layers, and on top of that, all that, we just went through COVID, so we are like, there's this distancing of each other. Like we can talk to each other right now in other means, we can find information. In the age of information, it seems like some of the connectivity has been lost. So we've lost some of the things that were fundamental to the transformative aspects of our work, and that were fundamental. The organizing of the 70s and the 60s and the 80s of like 2 decades ago was not perfect by any means. But there was something about it that was essential in connecting and transforming people, and being, slowing down to hear, to listen, and to meet people where they're at. we, and this, this goes for us, we've done incredible work the past year, but we know that, and some of it had to be done because we are looking at multiple layers of challenges, but we do get sometimes into the pattern of chasing the stuff that's shiny, the stuff that, is out there that is gonna, give us the most likes or this and that. And the work of organizing is slower. And sometimes it's not the thing that makes the 8 o'clock news, but it's the thing that's gotta be there. It's the salt that if you forget to put in that delicious meal, it doesn't taste the same. It's the yeast in the bread, and the organizing and that transformative aspect has to come back and be centered to our organizing, not just the moments that go viral, right? So People's Action, we've taken a task to get better at that. We're going to change. We want to change that. We want to get back to that kind of transformative aspect. And over the last 10 years, we've tried different things. We've gotten really, really good at different things. But this is a state of the movement right now. It's a state of humanity that we've lost, the disconnected. And I believe that organizing is an antidote to what's happening in the country right now. And so for us, an organizing revival is what's gonna wake up the nation across the country and bring us back to those essential aspects of organizing that are transformational.
So that transformational antidote, why should everyone here be a part of it?
Look, I talk about this a lot, but I say that we're in a moment of at least 3 overlapping crises. I mean, there's a lot, but I think that there are at least 3 that, if we don't figure out how to prepare for them, I mean, generations, are lost, and it's up to us. And a lot of us have a lot of people that we care about and have not given up on humanity and this country yet, because we're still here. But we're looking at the crisis of democracy, the rapid growth of authoritarianism, which is already like visible in very concrete ways in states all across the country. We're looking at climate crisis, and we see it every day. We see news, like the horrible images that we're seeing from places where things that are beyond our control, and some are within our control, are just, hurting and causing hurt in so many people. But then there's also a crisis of social cohesion. There's this isolation, there's this individualistic and sometimes, capitalistic way of like, we all are so busy trying to get what we need. And we've isolated ourselves on top of, like I said, the COVID, which actually forced us to stay indoors or sit 6 feet away from each other. And that, I grew up in a Pentecostal church, and I truly believe that there is incredible power when people come together. And when I came into organizing, that was my work. I could see in the basements, in the meetings, what happened when people actually came together. So there is incredible power in talking to each other, in learning about each other, and in thinking and imagining the possibilities together. And so I know that if we don't come together, we can't fix the state of our country. There was an intentional and sustained effort to break us apart into little pieces, whether that's, whether it's about a sports game or a team, or, there's intentionality in a system that has been designed to keep us apart. But we want to change all that. And like I said, organizing is an antidote. We can rebuild the very common and basic, simple, but sometimes hard bonds of community. And that is a first step to rebuilding our democracy, or to even create the kind of a democracy that can even work for all of us, because we talk about it, we make meaning together, and we can imagine it and visualize it together, and then we can fight for it together. But it starts with actually having the willingness and understanding that, yes, it's up to me and we got to do something about it. And this is this is what we are trying to move through the organizing revival. We believe that the organizing revival can help us roll back this momentum and get us away from this dangerous path.
Yes. And so you touched on the longevity, the track record of people's action. In addition to what you've already shared, can you talk about, the greatest worries you have for what's ahead if we don't organize ourselves for this work?
Oh my goodness. I mean, look, I talk about the fact that that there's incredible power. Every community in every state at every level deserves just the richness of a multiracial democracy. That we can dream about it together, that we can bring it about. I know my children and my grandchildren deserve that, and whatever is left of me in my life, I want to spend making sure that we have that, and that it's a democracy that works for everyone. And I think there are thousands of people, and we've seen it through some of the programs here at People's Action. I'm sure that Aaron at SURJ and also Adrian, all of us have seen it and are committed to it. Every community needs good organizing, and that's how we get to a multiracial democracy. We all have seen what's happening in our country right now because of the division, and what's at stake is the very ability for our children, my grandchildren, to be able to play at the park and feel safe, to be able to go to school and be safe and have that be a place where you feel held and where you learn, and all the basic institutions of community and how you feel like you belong. All those things are at stake, and that I think we're finding out as we're losing those spaces, and those spaces that helped us, including that community organizing was something that helped make meaning of that, including that. As we lose them, we are learning to appreciate them, right? And because they do build healthy communities, and everything that's the opposite of that is at stake if we don't stop now.
We often talk in our society about inheritances and generational wealth, and it sounds like, for your purview and your expertise and experience, our generational health is based around this collective understanding and buy-in to organizing. So some people on this call might be wondering, why a bottom-up driven approach? Why does that matter? And honestly, why are we investing in places like Kansas, Idaho, or the place where I am, Lexington, Kentucky, for a matter of fact? Can you tell us why you think that's important or critical?
Well, first of all, because I wouldn't be here if we weren't organizing and doing great work in places like Kansas. It's very, this is very personal to me as a person who as a person who came from a country and was dropped in this state in the middle of the country, in parts with very rural parts in America. No, I wouldn't have thought in my life that this would be the place where I would find a community of people who actually cared about climate and people of color being at the center and having a voice. And I did, and that's what's important. But these are also the places over the life. I've lived here now most of my life, and I've done the work of organizing here in the state. And I've learned to love the possibilities that can happen in places like Kansas. One, because there's a lot, you can do a lot more with less resources, and we know that, and we've been doing and creating miracles with that for, at least in my experience, for over 30 years. And people here understand and are curious about each other. And it's important, you know, to be in places where, like, as an immigrant, somebody did reach out to me, and he was here in Kansas. People's Action was here in Kansas over 25 years ago when I met one of the co-funders. So I think it's important, because if we're not in those places, it is also the places where the opposite forces who try to divide us begin to create their science experiments, right? And it happened to us here in Kansas, in 2020, when a man by the name of Chris Kobach used immigrants to create fear in the state, to pass anti-immigrant laws, not only here in Kansas, but in every other state, because it grew here in the backyards where nobody, was paying attention. And as organizing was moving and being debilitated, that started to grow, and it started here in Kansas, in late a couple of decades ago, and that then it goes out of it is transported out of here. It doesn't just stay here, and it was all around a law that at the end of the day, using people of color, using immigrants specifically to create fear, to create laws that then kept a bunch of people out of the democratic process of voting. But it was using and dividing and pitting us against each other. And so organizing is the antidote to all of that. And that's what we did here. And so I believe that there are possibilities when we do bring people and say, how can we do this together? And how can we take advantage of the richness that the differences bring and not be afraid of them, but embrace them?
Yes, I love that. So Erin, thank you so much for your inspiring insight and perspective.
Thank you, Ashley.
And as we think about how on the other side, you just mentioned those folks who can be targeted and used to perpetuate misinformation. That then turns us to you, Erin. As you've been leading some of the hardest work in this country, in the deeply polarizing time that has been, the United States for the past 3 years, and we know way beyond, for the past 4 years, you have transitioned SURJ, to do the work of reaching out to displaced and abandoned, disaffected communities, particularly those working class, poor, and white people, to engage them around the fight for social and racial justice, including gender justice. Can you tell us why your work at SURJ is essential for our collective well-being?
Thanks, Ashley. Salma, that was awesome. So glad to be here with you and with Adrian and Ashley. Yeah, so, at SURJ, we have an assessment grounded in our history, and Salma was starting to some of it, just that, we know that race has been used to divide working people since the very beginning of this country. Salma talked about the systems that have been set up very intentionally to keep us divided. And we know that the very concept of race was created to prevent people from joining together across lines of difference. One of SURJ's mentors, Jerome Scott, a longtime founder of Project South, says that racism is designed to break our natural tendency to unite. That is actually our natural tendency. And those at the top know that, right? And at SURJ, we also are a fan of investing in places that, other people don't think are worth it. And, for us, we have a huge focus on the South. And that's from an assessment that, the right in particular knows that they can control the country by controlling the South. And specifically, I would say, from preventing alliances between folks of color who are struggling and poor and working class white people, really, who have everything to gain from joining alongside, poor and working people of color. And we've seen this throughout history in response to the civil rights movement, the winning the Voting Rights Act and dismantling Jim Crow that was happening from a very powerful Black-led multiracial movement out of the South. We saw the Southern strategy be advanced, which was, a very particular version of a long-standing strategy in this country, which was an intentional decision and strategy to, flame and exploit the racism of white people rebuild power and to gain power, governing power in this country. And that has largely worked. That's a huge part of why we are in the moment we're in right now. You know, the Democratic Party has been, you know, bleeding white voters since we passed the Voting Rights Act. And it's also led to the escalation in white nationalist violence we're seeing now, and to the democratic crisis that, you know, the project we're all working on together is very much trying to address. So, you know, at SURJ, we have an assessment. It is absolutely impossible to imagine a strong movement, the movement that we need, without people of color, as Selma said, at the center. And we have to bring, in order to build the majorities that are required for us to win, we actually do have to bring more white folks into this work. And at SURJ, we think that, you know, our assessment is a great investment is in poor and working class communities who really have very similar interests and shared stake in fighting for a better world for all of us. So that's what's been undergirding SURJ's moves and shifts over the last couple of years. Because when we know what we've seen at SURJ is when we help white people understand our stake, for those of us who are white, in fighting racism, those at the top actually lose their most powerful tool. It undercuts their strategy. And so, you know, we use Linda Burnham, a longtime movement scholar and leader in our movement, you know, in the aftermath of Trump's election. She said, she was very clear. She said, white rage is lethal to democracy. And if we do not organize poor white people around their suffering, someone else is. And so we very much see our work this is the work that we do at SURJ. We are in communities, you know, we have projects in rural areas, you know, in many states, in Ohio, in Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, where we are bringing more poor and working class white people into these multiracial fights, into these issue-based fights, very similar to the work of People's Action, you know, around housing and healthcare. And we're seeing that our folks are coming in, they're winning, they're fighting around issues, but through this work, we see our people get really clear about who their real enemies are. And it is not their Black and brown neighbors. It is people at the top, it is Republican legislatures, it is, you know, the far right. And that actually allows us to build a pretty deep and enduring solidarity and the bigger we that we all need. And yeah, I think it then begins to create more fertile terrain for us to be able to pass and advance a progressive agenda on a whole range of issues. So our part is very particular, but our part doesn't work without the much broader coalition. Yeah, so that's our part of the pie.
I love that. And speaking of that fertile terrain, you know, SURJ is joining in this work with United Vision, Idaho, and People's Action. You know, for you personally and for the future of SURJ, you know, why is that important?
Yeah, I'll pick up right where I left off, which is just that, you know, our part doesn't work without strong communities, without organizing in communities of color, right? And led by folks of color. And I think sometimes there can be a not helpful conflation, which is to say, like, if we're going to bring white folks in, well, then we've got to water it down. And actually at SURJ, what we found is the opposite, that actually, like, the bold visionary demands and vision that's been put out, like groups like People's Action and the Movement for Black Lives and so many other really powerful organizations, that's actually what inspires people to join. We shouldn't be watering things down. And so we need to be in relationship with other groups because we're just one very particular piece of the pie. And so, and, you know, it's also been incredibly powerful, I'll say in particular, working with Adrian and UVI, you know, to find other folks who have a shared assessment of this moment and the stakes of this moment. And to hold the both and, that we can both have a grounded, accurate assessment of this moment and still do the work in the communities that we need to as well. So the last thing I'll say on this is just, I think that there's not enough of us doing this work. There's not enough of us doing the work contending for people who are not yet with us. There's not enough of us yet who are grounded in a lot of what Selma talked about, the nuts and bolts, the unglamorous, I mean, I think it's great, unglamorous, the work of knocking doors and talking to people and staying with them in the tension when they don't agree with us yet. You know, I think that that's how we win, and we don't have enough of us doing that yet. And so, yes, I want to grow SURJ, but I also want to grow the bigger movement of people who get to be a part of our movement, who have the skills not just to be right, but for us to actually win.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Erin.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley.
Adrian, you have gathered us all together, not just us as facilitators and panelists, but you have been such an inspiration in getting to know you in preparation for this event tonight. And I want to talk a little bit about how your organization started this program in 2016, transitioning your approach to organizing at the doors and in communities after COVID to tailor technology to reach people at a critical time. Then in 2020, the program transitioned to what it is now, the United Vision Project. So can you describe the program for us?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you, Ashley, Salma, Erin, and all of the friends and people who have been working on this project for the last 3 years. I'm seeing you, and it's just amazing. All of the effort that we put into building what we are approaching today. So yes, you know, in 2016, we were having deep relational organizing. We were going into the places where white nationalists had more than doubled and were taking over particularly rural places across Idaho. Many of you will know that Idaho was once home of the Aryan nations, and their leaders today are saying that it was no longer enough that that be relegated to the north, that Idaho will become the new Aryan nation state. And we know that we've been out organized for the last 30 years, 40 years, right? There's been a massive divestment of the kind of work that needs to happen in rural places on the ground to build those connections and to meet people where they are, to provide different context and meaning. How are we approaching all of these issues that we share, right? And finding commonality and finding agency to work together. And so in 2016, we went out to these communities with one question: what hurts? What would make a difference to you, your family, and that of your community? And we listened. You know, a lot of this work isn't what we say, it's how much we're listening and really listening. And when we did that, we created a Idaho People's Platform. There was a People's Platform that had been launched by People's Action, and we wanted to really localize that. And so when we asked this question, people started telling us, divorced from political party, all of the things that we had been meeting as progressive organizers to talk about. And from there, we knocked 10,000 doors. Same question: what hurts? Now, the happy accident was that we had a giant door hanger. And so if, and rarely did they, people get stuck, we could say, well, here are the things that people in your community told us that are worrying them. But we don't leave people at their doors. We have to engage deeply and forge relationships and build community and support organizers working in these places. So when there was an area of commonality, our canvassers would say, I would like to ask you, Ashley, to come be my guest. On this date, we're all going to get together as a community. We're going to share a meal, and we're going to talk about the things that we have in common and how we can actually work together for our collective best interests. After that, we had great success. And it proved to us that this was the way we had to organize. And people don't understand, like, it's costly. You know, Idaho's a big state, and it's a massive investment, but it's the kind of investment that endures. Unfortunately, then COVID happened, and we had access to a text-based program. And we knew that we couldn't stop reaching out, that we had to do everything that we possibly could to see people, to meet people, to help them feel heard and seen and valued. And so we ended up texting 1.2 million people in Idaho. Same question: what hurts? And I didn't know, you know, I think the technology was very new to all of us. Like, you know, I often joke about how we all had to get PhDs to be able to like transition to this kind of work, but we wanted to maintain the authenticity of what we'd been doing. So we reached out, we had 489,000 conversations, 7 to 9 exchanges back and forth in peer-to-peer texting. So only one scripted question, and then you were with a human being. And these conversations lasted. And over 9 months, less than 1% of the people that we texted opted out. And it reinforced what we knew. People are feeling isolated and alone. They crave community and a sense of connection. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. We all want to be valued. And so it just really opened up an incredible way for us to have all of these conversations at the scale that we had never dreamt of before. So then in 2020, after the election, and living and it's very important, living in a place like Idaho, where we have been losing ground every single day because the institutions and structures that are here are operating on that premise of division, right? They're operating on a premise of like anti-democracy and wanting it to destroy it from inside out. And we've been trying, as other rural places have, for 30 years to sound the alarm. This is happening in plain view. Nothing that we have experienced as a country over the last 6 years is surprising in any way. But it is now squarely at the foot of every American in this country because we have ceded these areas and we've lost power. And the only thing that can allow us to go forward, to save our democracy and to build one that works for all of us, is to build people power. It's our strength, right? But it has to be deeply rooted. We also know how many people say, we want to just talk to the people who agree with us. We don't want to go talk to those people. Well, those people have been hurting. There are systems that haven't been working for them. You know, Aaron is working with poor working class folks who know very well, you know, that the systems that we've created haven't actually benefited them, right? And so that pain is real. But what it gets attributed to is where we really have to do the deep intervention to make new and different meaning. And we can't do it without talking to people who don't share our views. And so this time we set out, I think, to prove too, right, that it is this bad. It really is this bad. So we set out to ask people the question, what do you think are the main things that are dividing us? But I kind of invite everyone on this call tonight to think of that too. There are many of the same things, right? And from this, we didn't realize we've had, so this was reaching people in these communities who are subject to that narrative, right? Who are being organized and infiltrated into groups that are, you know, anti-democratic, extremist, given a sense of place and belonging and hope. And then they're also given the reason why. And so when we did that, we did it across 5 states because we knew that it wasn't just an Idaho thing. This is an us thing, right? So we reached out to Idaho, North Carolina, Georgia, upstate New York, and Oregon. And from what people told us, and this is the really fascinating part about this, it wasn't predetermined. It wasn't a survey. It wasn't something to prove what we already knew. It was to learn what we don't. Yeah. Right. And just the data that we've been able to collect in terms of putting together, like, how can we all collectively look at this so we are deeply learning and that the work we do in our movements is informed not by speculation, not by funders, not by researchers, but by real people that we need to organize. And so we've done that. And the other part was that I think for me, the real transformation that people went through who were doing the outreach, to develop those skills, to have hard conversations. You know, a lot of people came to this because they were really struggling in their own lives to have conversations with family or communities, right? And it was polarizing people at the most primary level. And so none of us get good at anything that we don't practice. This daily practice of outreach allowed people to build the skills and the tools and the muscle to hold people with dignity, even when we don't agree, to navigate those hard things and find out where we can identify areas of commonality so that then we can start pulling at those, finding our way back to each other and building the kind of people power that it will take if we are going to transform this country, if we are going to have an organizing revival and a place where, yes, it is our collective interests that are at stake. So how are we going to show up and model that? And I think that's what is exciting about this launch, right? Is that here are these incredibly powerful, dynamic, amazing women, right? Who are leading organizations that are changing everything. And we are coming together to know that and to share and to model, right? That we are bigger and better together. And we can work in a new spirit of collaboration because there's one goal: to build and leave a better world. And we don't do that in competition with each other. We do that by walking with each other.
And speaking of that collaboration, as you experienced an incredible transformational impact through this work, and the absence of any training of its kind that necessitated this national training hub. This hub launch comes from, it's birthed from all of those text messages, all of those doors, all of those volunteer experiences and their own collective reckoning. So can you tell us and share a little bit more about the partnership between Solma and Erin and yourself, and why it is so important that you've built this collective effort together that can reach people at this scale?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes. So, UVI is an affiliate group of People's Action. We were once an affiliate of US Action, and then we were there with the merger because in the same spirit, like we are better and bigger when we work together with our eyes on the North Star, right? I'm just so elated about Solma's leadership. It is the kind of leadership that has been missing, and just it's a joy and an honor to be able to work closely with her and our People's Action family and to dream and build something that can extend beyond what we must win in the moment to what we must build for the future. And with Erin, we met because we started doing some similar speaking engagements, and I'm like, who is that? Like, Erin's frame on all of this work is something that is far too rare. She is brilliant, insightful, and she gets it, and she knows where she comes from. And I've watched her transition and transform SURJ to become a really powerful player. And I think it's just, what is the melding of all of these things that can actually enhance each other's work, and also build something that is desperately needed. We had many organizations that reached out to us in this texting program to say, there is no program like this to develop these skills. And we don't have the capacity in our own organizations to offer this kind of training. Can we send our folks to participate so that they can learn this and be in community with the kind of support that your program is offering, to equip them to be able to be in their own communities at the doors and navigating hard conversations, right? It's the practice. It's the building skills. It's the community. That's how we're building. And it was just really, really powerful to watch everyone come back with different stories, navigating conversations with family. We had a woman, Erin might be on tonight, right? Talking about when she was working the polls, and somebody came in and they said, this is all bogus. Our votes don't count. And all of these folks recalling, like, hold on a second. If I were to take a minute and pause and think about how I would respond were I texting someone and actually apply that in real time, the ways that people have moved into community together, figured out commonality, and actually ended up on the other side where they're no longer demonizing each other, but seeing each other as human beings is the work. It's all of our work.
And can you frame, so tonight is a launch, the next step is to actually dive deep into the training hub. Can you briefly summarize what tools and resources individual organizers and institutions will be able to pull and utilize that infrastructure to push this movement forward?
No, I cannot briefly summarize, as Ben will tell you. I will try. So one of the things that's really fascinating is that this approach is really based in deep listening and deep relational, authentic organizing, right? It seems a little counterintuitive because we're also using texting, right, as a tool, but it is a tool. It is a tool that also keeps people safe as they learn and develop these skills, right? It also expands reach at a rate in a way that we've never, any of us, dreamt possible before. And it is keeping people engaged, right, at remarkable, astonishing rates. But there's also narrative, right? So we have a searchable narrative guide that provides people the tools to learn how to pivot through different conversations. And not because we predetermined what someone would say or what we were going to talk about. It is really coming from whatever they say. And us like really, really developing the skills so that we can actually function in the world and not in like magic messages or sound bites, but really with the integrity to be able to nuance all of those things and hold those multiple truths, right? It is and both. And also the binary between who is deserving and who isn't is exactly how we're being out organized. We can't afford to apply that same method in our own work if we really want to end up with a different result. And so there's one-on-one support. We have an incredible team that supports all of folks every single day of the week, right? And I think with this training hub, it was really, how do we do this so that everyone has access and we can build together? And that's why I think the partnership with SURJ and People's Action is so important, because, I think there's this tendency to think, I just need to build my thing.
Right.
But actually, when we build our things together, we get bigger together, right? We get more powerful together. And so from this, I will say the research that the data that we've collected to deepen our understanding is the largest set of data that's ever been collected in the world, because it just wasn't possible before. To deepen our understanding, to understand, are we approaching conversations in the right way? Or are we doing it in a way that actually doesn't speak to where people are? And the conversations. What words work? What words further polarize us? And how can we start looking at the way we speak about all of these things that are so personal, and yet it ends up, often going through a think tank. I always joked, like, so 4 years later and millions of dollars, we'll have the sound bite to talk about what we just lost. This is bottom up. It's about real people. It's about learning. It's about grace. It's about patience. And it's about building.
We're collectively building those muscles. And speaking of that collective mindset and approach, I'm going to go back to Solma and Aaron. Thank you, Adrienne. Both of your organizations engage in deep canvas. And so can you tell us how this approach is complementary and part of a larger strategy for effective organizing?
Sure, I can start. Look, I love just listening to Adrienne and what she's saying. And I think somebody said earlier, we need multiple ways. We need to collaborate and map out the different strengths. I think Deep Canvas for us has been a highly, highly effective methodology. It's about connecting people. It's still rooted in some of that deep listening and courage, and being, having respectful conversations about tough issues. But there it is. We with our methodology on Deep Canvas, which has also has been 3 years of research. Organizing is such a beautiful thing. It's not only transformational, but it's also listening to people, and then it's also about issues, right? It's about electoral campaigns, and it's about issues, right? Because there's an arc to organizing. You start with the transformational conversations, you do move into issues. So for us, Deep Canvas, it is a very effective tool, and we've proven that it's effective tool in the tough issues that people don't like to talk about, right? The issues of climate change, immigration, and so for us, Deep Canvas has been utilized as a tool to have deeper conversations on very specific issues. And I think this work is complementary for 2 reasons. One, because we need more people and we don't have enough people talking to each other, and because People's Action also has a training program. We train on a number of things that can help organizers in many parts of their work, but even with all of us, even with the 3 of us and the vision that we have together, we still need more people, right? And there's room for more. So we should, that's the orientation that I bring to this work. And for us, this is complementary to Deep Canvas, because we can understand, we know how Deep Canvas works with issues, electoral issues and campaign issues. But this can be very complementary because we need more entry points, and we need the conversations and to be talking to lots and lots of people in this moment. So that's how I think it's for us. We definitely see it as complementary.
Yeah, us too at SURJ. I come out of the labor movement. I grew up in a labor house and got schooled by the labor movement. And I think about, deep canvassing is like working to win the union, you got to count votes. And it's not the same as the broader, more transformational work that the labor movement does, right? Once we've organized into unions. And so, yeah, SURJ has done a lot of deep canvassing in partnership. We were part of the People's Action misinformation deep canvas. We've done deep canvassing on criminal justice issues across the country. And again, like Selma, we see it as playing one role. But we know that people need political homes. They need permanent political homes where the deeper, more transformational work can happen. And, the political education, they need to be engaged in campaign work, people transforming campaigns, the actual fighting for the thing we learn in the work. And so, I think part of what we're holding at SURJ is part of the moment we're in is the result of the relentless attacks actually on the labor movement. As imperfect as the labor movement can be, and as sometimes racist, pockets of the labor movement have been racist over the years. They were also a massive institution that were bringing working people together across lines of difference, and were able to mediate some of the racism from the right. And so, we see that as actually part of why we're in the situation we're in. And so we need to be creating, we need to be both strengthening the labor movement and supporting new organizers and new workers who are forming unions now. And we also need to be building permanent political homes where people can be transformed over time. And so Deep Canvas might be an entry point, but we need to create the political homes where people can do the deeper work for the long haul.
And I think one thing that's important to all 3 of us is also that through all of this work, we are building those political homes, not only at on the phone or on text. This is actually supposed to build strong organizations on the ground. And for us who are networks and are talking directly, we know that there's a set of skills that need to be taught and learned. But at the end of the day, it's all with these institutions need to live and be strong in the state. And our goal is to make sure that all of our organizations become political homes in their local communities where they're making meaning of the moment.
So regardless of where an interested organizer or institution finds themselves on the spectrum of experience, this opportunity welcomes the rookie, beginner, all the way to a more seasoned individual who is still looking to engage and sharpen their skill sets and grow that empathy so they can continue evoking this work. What would you say, again, Selma and Aaron, What would you say is at stake if we don't prioritize this approach and provide people with the training and practice to be successful in their organizing?
Erin, you want to start?
I'm happy to, though my answer is going to be quite so. I mean, I think everything's at stake. I've been taught by movement elders that, the arc of history is long, and it actually is the people in my life who have been in the movement longest who have taught me about the stakes of this moment and have grounded me in really what the next handful of years are ahead of us. And I think that everything's at stake in this moment. And so there's, and we, as Salma said, we don't yet have the folks with the skills of the fundamental. I think organizing is what's going to save us. And so we've got to be able to create homes where people can learn and people can do it collectively. I think we are steeped in a culture of individualism, and that has bled into our organizing spaces or activism spaces. And we have to have places where people can learn how to build a bigger we and how to have support in doing that, because none of us can do that alone, whether it's individual organizations or individuals on the ground. So I think everything's at stake, and I think we've got to give people the support and community to be successful, because we need a lot more organizers and we need a lot bigger movement.
I think that's great. I agree with every word. And I also, would just add that, look, we train on everything we want to get really good at, and organizing and being the best at that it's continuous education. An organizer is assessing the landscape at every moment and helping with communities to make meaning. And so that's part of practice. If we are not training and constantly making meaning and learning new tools to do that in this moment, we're going to read the map wrong, and we're going to be heading in the wrong direction. And at the end of the day, we're not going to be building the kind of power that we need in order to have the kind of democracy and communities, humanity, who can really tackle what's ahead of us and the crisis that we're facing.
So tonight we've been led by 3 servant leaders from across the country, speaking about how people-driven governance activates democracy, which is a verb. It's an action that we continuously have to work towards, improving ourselves, getting the training, receiving community, humbling ourselves and saying, I don't have the answers. So as we recap our time tonight, I'm going to frame some of the things that we've touched upon. And during that time, I invite you, our incredible guests who have joined us from across the country, to drop any questions that you may have in the chat to continue engaging in our time. And Mike, if you want to lead me in the chat and just letting us know where we are on our time with today's event, just so we don't go over, or out of respect for everyone's schedule. So tonight we have worked to frame the importance of the struggle for democracy, not just leaving it on the table for it to be up for grabs. It's something that we actively fight for. It's something that we actively look to historical contributions and innovations, and how the future opportunities that we can collectively create together help emerge and move forward progress. We've looked at the arc of the training and some of its pillars. Thank you, Adrian, for leading us through that. And we've drawn on the relationships. It's not I, it's we. And so Adrian, Salma, and Erin have been able to frame and recap their work in their respective communities and how they've spilled over and creating this amazing ripple effect. If you have any questions, again, we invite you to place those in the chat. Erin, Adrian, and Salma, if you have any final words that you'd like to, share with the group, any action items that have come to you just from hearing your fellow panelists tonight, we invite you to share that as well.
I just want to say thank you. Thanks to everyone here. Look, we're here to celebrate yet another entry, another door into the many ways that people can engage. And so tonight is about another opportunity for us to make a difference. And so I'm excited, and thank you all for the opportunity and for your incredible work.
Well, I will just follow up with that to say we have a training event next week. So the 15th and 16th, and everyone here will get an invitation to come join. I think, you know, we look at a lot of this like sometimes like, that's hard or maybe uncomfortable, but growth sometimes is. And this is a real invitation for each and every one of us to invest in ourselves. Invest in ourselves to build the skills and the muscles so that we can invest in our communities. We can invest in the people and their lives whom we love, right? It doesn't happen just because we want it to. It takes work. And there's an incredible team here to support and foster all of that development. And I think many would say who have been volunteers with us, like there's a real community and friendships and relationships that are formed because we're for each other. We're for each other. And by building our reserves, we can give, we can create, we can cultivate. You know, all things left unattended eventually break and fail. Democracy is no different. And together we are planting the seeds, cultivating the soil, and producing the conditions for us to harvest all the things that we need and must have together. So please, I invite you to come. And I'm so, so grateful for everyone who's joined us tonight. And, you know, Ashley, for your facilitation, and most especially Sulma, Aaron, for your leadership and your vision and the spirit that we are bringing to this time that our country so desperately needs.
Thank you again, each of you, for taking the time. Please join UVI and their incredible partners next Wednesday and Thursday for the actual training. You can find that link in the chat and in your inboxes following our time tonight. Make sure you also share that out to folks in your network so we can, again, bring more people into this important, critical, vital work here across our democracy and our country. We thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Walk with me, I'll walk with you down these troubled roads we've stumbled into. We're all in this thing together, we're gonna make it through. If you walk with me, I'll walk with you.